It's all about the ICJ, the disputed waters between Mogadishu and Nairobi. And this week, last week, the minister issued a presser where she said that Kenya opts for an out-of-court settlement as the ICJ, of course, pushed the hearing dates to November the 4th and 9th. But before we get to the nitty-gritty of the discussion, here's what CS Dr. Ambassador Monica Juma did say.
In 2009, those of you who will remember, Nairobi and Mogadishu signed a memorandum of understanding that preferred the settlement of the maritime dispute, if it ever arose, by the use of a negotiated approach. And we hope that our sisterly country will be amenable and cooperative in this endeavor. In our view, it would be irresponsible on the part of any of us not to take all measures that insulate us from any further vulnerabilities in already a very fragile environment.
All right, welcome back. Professor Munene, first to you. Of course, you have extensively written about this topic in the standard column of yours, and equally, what's at stake here, what's at the fulcrum point, is about power, status, and above all, sovereignty. Has this so far standoff, the maritime dispute between Mogadishu and Nairobi, degraded the gains made against Al-Shabaab, to be specific, in Somalia?
Oh, it has effect on Al-Shabaab's ability to maneuver itself.
Mm-hmm. Effect, positive, negative?
Negative effect. Mm-hmm. When the two countries are not able to concentrate on dealing with the terrorists, because they are squabbling over something else, then that gives leeway to the terrorists to feel free to maneuver. So it's not been very good for the region, for the two countries, when we have this sort of preoccupation, as opposed to figuring out how to cooperate more in economic challenges, commercial challenges that can be dealt with. So there is that that needs to be looked into.
Yes. 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 From where you sit, Andrew Franklin, perspectively then, give us the outlook in terms of the gains, politically and security-wise, that Monica Juma has issued the press. Of course, her statement is Kenya's position, now opting for an out-of-court settlement. At the same time, adjacent to that is the court now extending or postponing the hearing dates from September to November 4th and 9th. Does it look like perhaps a gateway for diplomatic approach, which initially was missing between Mogadishu and Nairobi, to sit down and have that diplomatic approach to resolve the maritime dispute?
Well, despite coming some 5 or 6 years too late, the CS for Foreign Affairs, you have to support what she said. Everything she said is absolutely correct, despite the fact that it should have come 5 or 6 years ago, and that some experts, some people who believe that Al-Shabaab poses an existential threat to not just Mogadishu, but also to the security of Kenya as well, and other areas that are marginal in the Horn of Africa, would prefer that the governments, the legally constituted sovereign governments, would focus on countering and defeating Al-Shabaab insurgency, whether in Somalia or within the 5 frontline counties of Kenya. So I believe that the ICJ did, in fact, accept Kenya's request to change its defense team at the last minute, to give the two parties, the two states, the two governments, the opportunity, perhaps, to establish some sort of negotiations, which ideally would lead to a joint economic commission to exploit not merely the triangle, the disputed triangle, but also much of the blue economy, the maritime zones. After all, Kenya has the largest navy on the Indian Ocean outside of South Africa. Mogadishu has not had a chance, or has not been given the opportunity, has not demanded the opportunity to establish a federal coast guard to control its own waters. The anti-piracy operations are being conducted mainly by Joint European Task Force, Navy ships, as well as the Puntland Maritime Police, which leads to problems between Puntland and the FGS, Federal Government of Somalia. We also see that, like it or not, there are all kinds of issues that seem to crop up between Kenya and Somalia, including the role of Kenya in Jubaland outside of Amazon.
Yes.
In other words, the fact that Kenya greeted the re-election of the president of Madobe, at the same time as the FGS was questioning the credibility of that sub-state, that autonomous state. In the last week and a half, al-Shabaab has ramped up attacks in the Burundi sector of Somalia, and has been essentially inflicting fair number of casualties on the Burundi troops.
Largely the AMISOM contingent.
The Burundi troops who are part and parcel of the AMISOM contingent, who have been there since 2007, 2008, when Uganda first entered the fray. And you know, the fact is, last week we also had a situation within Kenya where one of these Chinese armored personnel carriers was blown up by al-Shabaab, a platoon of al-Shabaab soldiers who fired an RPG-7 at the APC, and at least 5 or 6 police, security force members were killed. So in fact, there's a lot going on in this region, which we know.
All right. But of course, you did mention the fact that the government also issued a statement regarding the armored personnel carriers afterwards that attacked by the militant group. And equally, one person who has been under the spotlight regarding the purchasing of that has been the late Internal Security Minister, George Kaiseri, who appeared before the parliamentary
retired general in Kaiseri. You should have known
Prof,
better.
I'll come to you. Before we go to the, of course, the flip end of this entire issue, because there's also the pursuit or quest by Kenya to attain the now permanent position of the United Nations Security Council. Given the situation at the moment, yes, Kenya opts to do that. It said that there has been a memorandum of understanding in 2009, and that has been, of course, seen as a way forward to resolve the dispute. However, just weeks ago, the government of Kenya, Nairobi, issued a stopover of flights from Mogadishu in Wajir before coming or touching down at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Subsequently, then, Mogadishu said that all flights to Kismayo and from Kismayo should stop over at Aden Abdullah International Airport in Mogadishu before proceeding to Kismayo. How will this, again, sort of chalk and cheese argument diplomatically further deepen the already dilute situation on the maritime?
Excuse me. You see, this maritime thing appears to be a cooked-up thing.
By who? Are they interested parties?
Yes.
You at some point mentioned powerful European capitals.
Yes.
To be specific, which countries in Europe?
I think the Norwegians have an interest, the British have an interest, and to some extent the Americans have an interest. And see, we're talking about, Andrew was saying, should have done something 5 years ago. What is it that happened 5 years ago? You have these oil companies being created.
Yes, the shell companies.
Yeah, about 2013 or 2014, thereabout. And this federal government did not have problems in Kenya before that. So when these companies are created, and some of the directors are top British politicians or some other European politicians, then they have some of the directors, people who now are officially part of the federal government of Somalia. And a country that was seemingly bankrupt didn't have anything.
Yes, at the time there was no functional government.
There was nothing. And suddenly it had a lot of money and resources to run to the ICJ and say, oh, you want to put a case here.
And sue.
And sue. Yeah. You know, there was no serious attempt to discuss anything. It was just a rush. Let's go to ICJ. And so it was really not the Somali people who did this.
All right.
It is these other forces, because they have an interest in controlling not only the maritime resources, but also a bigger geopolitical power play. Because if they get away with what they are saying, the effect is essentially to landlock Kenya within a sea. You know,
all right.
That's one of some of the, it appears, the projected ramifications of this thing if it should go through.
All right.